Guy Verhofstadt called for the creation of an EU army to counter Russia's threat in Ukraine, but the Belgian MEP was promptly shamed with his own country's decline in defense expenditure. The Belgian politician said Russia's threat on the border with Ukraine and the US attempts to negotiate with Vladimir Putin to de-escalate tensions was a return to a Cold War. Mr. Verhofstadt called on the EU to act by deploying a European army against the Russian president and avoid repairing history by being left out of the negotiations. He said, "The Cold War is back. And Europe is back to what it was during that war, a bystander when its own fate is being decided." History repeating itself as farce. Time for a European strategy on the threat Putin poses to the peace on our continent. But the Belgian MEP was promptly shamed by Jonathan Eyal, Associate Director of RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies, who noted that Belgium's own spending on defence had significantly declined since the 60s. Sharing a graph from the World Bank of data, Mr. Eyal pointed to the fact that Belgium spent almost 3.4% of its GDP on defence and international security in 1960. But in 2020, that had declined to just a mere 1.08%. With diplomats publicly pessimistic, the United States and Russia began difficult negotiations in Geneva on Monday that Washington hopes can avert the danger of a new Russian invasion of Ukraine without conceding to the Kremlin's far-reaching security demands. Brussels has lamented it is being left out of the negotiations, with EU Commissioners Josep Borrell and President Ursula von der Leyen pleading with Joe Biden to be included in the talks last week. Russia said on Tuesday it was not optimistic after a first round of talks with the United States on the Ukraine crisis and would not allow its demands for security guarantees from the West to become mired in tortuous negotiations. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said it was positive that Monday's talks in Geneva had been held in an open, substantive and direct manner, but Russia was interested only in results. He said, "There are no clear deadlines here, no one is setting them, there is just the Russian position that we will not be satisfied with the endless dragging out of this process." Russia has pushed the West to the negotiating table by massing troops near Ukraine's border as it presses a set of far-reaching demands that would prevent Ukraine from ever joining NATO and roll back 2 decades of alliance expansion in Europe. Washington has said it cannot accept these demands, although it is willing to engage on other aspects of Russia's proposals by discussing missile deployments or limits on the size of military exercises. Peskov said the situation would be clearer after 2 further rounds of talks that Russia is due to hold this week, with NATO in Brussels on Wednesday and at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, in Vienna on Thursday. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said the 2 sides had in some ways opposite views. He told reporters, "For us it's absolutely mandatory to make sure that Ukraine never, ever becomes a member of NATO." U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman said, "We were firm in pushing back on security proposals that are simply non-starters to the United States." The United States urged Moscow to reverse its buildup of an estimated 100,000 troops near the border with Ukraine, which has prompted Ukrainian and Western concerns about a possible new invasion, 8 years after Russia seized Crimea from Ukraine. Ryabkov said Russia had no intention of attacking Ukraine, but Sherman said she did not know if Russia was willing to de-escalate by returning troops to their barracks. Ukraine was under Moscow's rule for centuries, including as part of the Soviet Union, and President Vladimir Putin has said the prospect of NATO admitting it as a member, or stationing weapons there that could strike Russia, is a red line. Ukraine wants to join NATO, which would come with a promise of protection from attack. The alliance has no immediate plans to admit it but says Russia cannot have a veto over its relations with other sovereign states. U.S. President Joe Biden warned Putin in 2 conversations last month that any new Russian aggression will trigger severe economic costs in the form of unprecedented sanctions. Putin responded that such moves would be a colossal mistake and lead to a complete rupture in relations.